Welcome back to Flashback Files, where we help students, recent grads, and young professionals reflect on how early experiences shape confidence, identity, and the way we think about the future. Today's conversation is a little different because it's not just about a guest, it's about someone who was there for many of the moments I've personally been unpacking throughout this series. My guest today is my older brother, Ryan. Ryan and I grew up in a house full of boys, four boys to be specific. And like a lot of families, there were rules that formed without ever really being spoken. Ryan was the oldest of the four of us in the house. We have five half brothers and one half sister. And whether he realized it at the time or not, he was the one who went first. First to be known at school, first to build a reputation, first to navigate expectations that didn't come with a roadmap. And for me, coming right behind him, I experienced a version of that world that had already been shaped. Teachers knew the name, coaches had expectations, people had already formed opinions, some good, some not so ideal. But what I didn't fully understand at the time was what it took for him to create that foundation in the first place. In my own reflections, I've talked a lot about confidence, validation, trying to fit in, and figuring out who I was in those early years. But what we don't always realize or think about is how those same years were unfolding for the people closest to us, often in very different ways. Ryan's story isn't a straight line from early jobs in retail and fast food to warehouse work to finding his footing in the trades and building a long term career in the electrical field. His path is one that reflects persistence, adaptability, and learning through experience rather than having everything figured out from the start. Today, he's a husband, a father of three. One of his three is Keegan, who appeared on the March 16th Flashback Files episode, and a coach, someone who's now in a position to shape the next generation in ways we didn't fully understand when we were kids ourselves. In this discussion, we talk about what it meant to be the oldest in a house like ours, how identity and confidence form differently depending on where you sit in a family, and how two people can grow up in the same environment but walk away with completely different perspectives. More than anything, this is a conversation about perspective and what we can learn when we take the time to understand not just our own story, but someone else's version of the same moments. I'd like to welcome my brother Ryan to the show. Rye, thanks for joining me.
Yashi, thanks for having me.
So, Rye, I know you quite well. For people meeting you through this conversation, how would you describe who you were as a kid in a house full of four boys?
I was obviously the oldest in the house, so I was just happy to, do what I needed to do. I was curious. I was confident. I love to be out and about. I like kind of being the center of attention, believe it or not. Um, and again, I guess when you think of it now, in a house full of four boys, I guess everyone's fighting for a little attention. So some look for it, some don't, but I definitely enjoyed being there when I could.
I would also say fighting for food was a big thing too.
Yes, my wife and I talk about that often because I guess maybe I got this knack for eating everything I eat quite quickly, and maybe that came from there with us all having one chip bowl to dig in and eat it while it's there. Or you ain't getting none.
What do you think growing up as the oldest of the four boys in the house asked of you that maybe nobody fully saw at the time?
Um, I think just again, you touched on a little bit in your history of yourself, or our history, sort of. Our parents didn't have the ideal relationship, so a lot of our mom took on 80% of the workload as far as looking after us, taking us places, meals, all that type of stuff. So I think for me, it was just like trying to make those things a little bit easier. Maybe helping get somebody ready. Maybe just looking outside to make sure somebody's okay while they're playing out front. Just little things like that. You know, she never asked any of these things of me or anything like that, but those might have been the things that I just kind of did, kind of sensing that a little bit of helping hand wouldn't have hurt.
I recall a story leaving McDonald's, saving
Yeah,
somebody's life.
I believe this was McDonald's upper gauge actually, and it was me, you, mom, and she was pushing, I guess, our youngest brother at the time, not youngest, but younger brother Jay. And as we came up the door, you decided to just book it. and you were running straight to the road, and she's yelling, "Josh!" And I just managed to grab you by the back of your neck, at the back of your hood, and literally steps away from running into the road.
Yeah, so I'd say that's
So
pretty much stepping up.
things like that, saving lives.
So when you look back now, do you feel like you were naturally a leader in the family, or did that role get placed on you?
No, I wouldn't say it's placed. I think just, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the oldest brother. It can just be the next brother up that if I'm not there and someone else is there, it's just you just do that, right? Like you just know you feel that you need to help and do things, and you go into family functions, and we didn't go to a whole lot of them, but when we did, it was like we needed to behave. So yeah, I think that started with me. If I'm not bouncing off the walls, drinking pop and eating all the chips that gets put out, hopefully naturally you and Jay and Jesse would just kind of be as relaxed as I was hopefully being. And I'm pretty sure we were usually pretty well behaved, but I would like to think that maybe some of that came from starting with me and then everyone following suit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you remember most about the overall energy of our household growing up?
Overall energy. Uh just I guess different than other homes is what I'd say. Like you touched on it before, saying you went to a friend's home because it smelled like baking cookies or fresh cooking and not cigarette smoke and stuff like that. But again, I touched on it with our parents. Again, didn't have the typical TV family relationship, so there was a lot of uh, unfortunate yelling and things like that. Didn't always, things weren't always bells and whistles at home and stuff. Sometimes you just wanted to, just be up in your room or just go outside and just not be there because it wasn't always, an up and up type of fun in the house. Not that it was, no abuse or anything like that, but just not always happy because parents bickering, and that can be tough on kids.
Did you think that you showed up outside of the house different than you would have showed up inside? What I mean by that, and I bring it up in kind of my overview of the experience is like almost like two faces. You portray maybe a
Yeah.
happier lifestyle outside of the house when you're with friends and that sort of thing, but inside, you know that there's a lot of chaos and
Yeah, and I don't think it's
volatile.
necessarily like portraying outside that things are. I think you just don't let everyone see that. Like you just, it's how, if someone's having a conversation about how great things are going, I'm not going to say, "Oh man, things aren't so good." I'm just like, "Oh, that's great," and it is what it is. And again, there was nothing detrimental happening to me or in our household, so it wasn't like I needed some help from anybody. But again, you just don't need to, you know, divulge all the stuff that's going on, especially when it's not like ideal.
Right. When you think about your childhood and our childhood, what stands out more now when you reflect on it? The fun, the chaos, the pressure, or the responsibility?
I'd say probably tie between chaos again with bickering and some of the drama that dad could stir up sometimes when he was downstairs rocking that stereo and the house was vibrating. But a lot of it, I think, would say fun in the sense that, again, I've noticed, of course, if you go back in the previous episodes, I guess I've set the record now for officially the oldest guy or oldest guest on the show. So when we go back to our time, it was just the good old, I guess, what I call kind of simpler time. You just eat breakfast, you go outside at 10 a.m., and you might pop in at 2 for a quick sandwich and back outside. And just that simple stuff where, with kids now, there's just so much interaction, so much access to stuff far beyond East 21st Street. You know what I mean? Like but when we were younger, it was just, that was what we knew. That was our bubble, was that little neighborhood. And I think that was some great time. And that's the fun and stuff I enjoyed, was just being at a simple time then.
I agree. The simple games we made in the basement, the playing out on the street, hockey, that sort of thing. It was a very, very simple time and
Well, it's funny you
well
mentioned
fun.
the games in the basement. And Katie, my wife, she laughs at me all the time because I tell her about the flashlight game, which we won't get into. We'll explain that later. But she gets a good kick out of that one. But yeah, and the chasing game outside, all these things.
What
Some people might refer to as manhunt, but we called it the chasing game, and all that stuff, right? Like it was great.
what about Bully in the Alley? Have you told her about that?
Oh
I thought
yeah,
that was a classic.
that's actually the other one, bully in the alley. Again, maybe we could divulge what these games are. Again, kids without access to tons of things, you gotta make up your own fun. And while those sometimes ended up in people getting hurt, we managed to entertain ourselves somehow,
Yeah.
some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just to round out a little bit, well, we're still gonna hover around like your experience and stuff, but can you just quickly describe mom and then describe dad? Like just a few key traits of each of them that stand out to you.
Well, uh, so mom, I mean, like anybody's mom, your mom is the greatest, to them. And like I mentioned earlier, that our mom did 80% of the workload around the house for everything. So she was very supportive. She worked hard. She did 12-hour shifts, would somehow sleep with four boys ramping around before she'd go back to work. She was an amazing cook, always put together great dinners. She really would just, try and get you what you want, without trying to, you know, shed a tear right now. One of the best memories I have is a Christmas, the old, and I wish I could find one. I probably could. The old Georgetown pullovers, and everybody had one. They had Chicago Bulls, Charlotte Hornets, Oakland Raiders, and there was a lot of the. I remember specifically, there's a lot of the Georgetown one, but everybody had the blue and gray one, or blue and white. I really wanted the black and gray one. There wasn't that many of those ones around. And Christmas came, we open all our stuff, and it's the classic. You're happy with what you got. You're like, oh man. And then she comes in, 10 minutes later with that box. And I still remember hugging that jacket and running from upstairs to downstairs with that thing. So just stuff like that. Like she always, we didn't have tons and tons, but she always made sure that there was going to be something that you got that was what you needed or what you really wanted. And she was very, very special. And dad, he was a character. He loved his kids and would do what he needed to do for you and get things. But unfortunately, he suffered with alcoholism. So some days could be rough and some nights could be rough. But he would be supportive. And I remember when I was younger, going to school, he'd always be at the table where he was having a beer and a smoke. But I'd be there and he'd be writing down words and trying to get me to spell them, and was always adamant about doing well in school and stuff like that. Just he wasn't hands on and he wasn't always at your stuff, but he cared in his own kind of crazy Jamaican way. And the two times that I remember him being involved in something that he wouldn't normally do was one with you. They had, I believe, was a father son or a parent son soccer game. And I didn't see this game, but he went to that game. And I wish I remember how old he was. He might have been a couple of years younger than I am now. I don't know, but I know for the next couple of days, he was hobbling around the house. And boy, oh boy, I don't want to play in soccer again. That is what I remember from him for that. And the one other kind of thing that, again, we had one family trip that we went on to Florida that he came along, and he was enjoying the rides and did some of the rides, but we got in one of those ones where they buckle you in the seat, and the screen just has the navigation, and the seats are moving all over the place. And they buckled him in, and the first second that seat moved, he get me out of here, and he's like trying to get us, and he's just on for the ride. No more of those rides for me. So again, a couple of things. So he had his moments, but he was definitely not your typical uh, dad.
Yeah, willing to step out of his comfort zone to appease a child or four.
Once in a while, yes.
It's just funny. The thought popped in my head, so I'll just share it. I feel like I struggle with my personality today because mom was very, I would say she's an introvert, like to
Mm.
do her solo things, the knitting, the sewing, all of that. And then dad, we just heard a friend talk about it yesterday, the ultimate sales guy out, very boisterous and, can talk to anybody. And I feel like that turns off and on at any given week. And I credit that to being raised by mom, but also having
Yeah.
dad. I don't know if you have that
I,
experience.
yeah, I think I'd probably be more on the 80% dad side. Like I don't think there's much introvert to me. Like maybe once in a while I could hang out alone, but if you ask my wife, she'd always say like, you know, you can never be home alone. Like when everyone goes out, I'm always kind of looking for someone to go hang out with. And but I mean, I could, but I just like, why not? So I think I'm 80% Edford in that sense, and not very introverted and quiet. I'm kind of always looking for the action.
Yeah, that's consistent. I know for high school, which we'll probably get into a little bit, but
Yeah.
so I've always felt, and I know I've mentioned this multiple times, that you had the harder job because you had to make the name first, whether it was school, sports, or even around the neighborhood. Did it ever feel like you were carrying that responsibility, even if nobody said it out loud?
I don't think so because again, I guess in the sense, as we've all gotten older and green boys, whatever, blah, blah, blah. When we're younger, again, it's not like our parents were a politician or athlete or someone like that, where like you had a name that was known that you had to kind of make sure it was okay or make or protect or anything like that. It was more just, it was just living. If anything, it was like trying to separate our green name from another green name because there was another two brothers that grew up in the city, light skinned guys just like us, around our age. And as I would navigate, roller garden is one of my favorite places and things like that. You meet new people and oh, sorry, all right, Green. Are you brothers with so and so Green? And I'm like, no. But everywhere I'd go, every person that I might meet somebody, they would mention this guy. And I'm like, man, who is this guy? Like, because I don't know him, but it just seemed everyone knows. So it was almost more like trying to separate our green from their green kind of thing.
I was at Oliver's hockey party just today, and it was assumed like you're Matt Green's brother, right? No, no, not the same Green. Right.
It's
Yeah.
been that since I'm 12, 13 years old. So once I got off E21st and started gallivanting around, it's just really strange. And again, I get it. Last name's the same, and we're literally light skinned and maybe have similar physical attributes that I understand it, but I was just like, to me, it was just like, why does everybody know this guy?
So when you look back, what do you think the pros and cons of being the older brother were in general?
Um, pros and cons. I mean, I guess the pro is you kind of get you might get a few extra little treats here and there. You're a little bit older, I can remember a few times after karate class, go stop and grab a donut. Again, go get my little Boston cream with mom. She'd take me to go do that. So a couple little things. Um, but I'd say like there might be a few more cons in the sense that like a lot of the stuff that I would, and I'm sure every older brother, and even it might trickle down to that they're just, by the time I got to Jesse, I think we've had a conversation, I got to be a free father. There was just things that I wasn't allowed to do or that I got in trouble for that no one blinked an eye at, that maybe as you did it or Jay did it or Jesse did it. It was just like these are things that I wasn't allowed to do. And then just, again, our parents were overly strict, but rules seem to get a little looser as time goes on. So I'd say that's maybe, and that's not even really a con, it's more of just a envious, jealous, darn it kind of thing. But I would say that would be it.
Yeah, I definitely saw it as an advantage that all the stuff that you weren't allowed to do went through a filter, and then yeah, I mean it was reduced in size, but not so much as it was for Jesse. I think Jesse got away with a lot of stuff, but I definitely appreciated the fact that I got to kind of learn through you, like what right and wrong look like. And oh, he got in a lot of trouble for that, so I'm just gonna stay away from it.
Yeah.
Did it ever bother you that your reputation could benefit your younger brothers while you had to build yours from scratch?
No, I think that's just par for the course was just like, he just wanted to be a good kid in this, that way maybe if it meant later on someone a teacher was a little extra nice or just maybe give you a little extra something or in the sense of if it meant somebody I knew, if one of you guys were say at a party or at a situation, maybe things were getting out of control and there was going to be a problem, but somebody that I already knew who you were and was able to step in and kind of put out that fire or something like that. Things along those lines would or if anything make you feel good, but no resentment. 'Cause again, it's not like I had to like walk to school in bare feet or anything like that. Like it was just out there living and trying to be a good person. And if you got to benefit from that in some way, then amazing.
So in my own reflection, I kind of talk about being in the middle, like feeling I was in between, not the oldest, not the youngest, just trying to be seen. From your perspective, what do you think what role do you think each of us played in the family? So I know we put personas on each other, like we would choose our Ninja Turtle, that sort of thing. If you were to do something like that, whether it's a popular character that you could relate us to, or just maybe describing each of us, how would you do that?
Yeah, I'd say the Ninja Turtle comparison was a funny one. I don't know if it always worked out that way because I guess technically I would have been Leonardo, but my favorite one was Michelangelo. So in that aspect, it didn't always line up. But I guess again, I'm being the oldest, just the responsible one maybe, and then for yourself again, being the middle, you were battling, I guess, identity stuff, which I didn't realize was so deep. The identity stuff that you've spoken of previously. So you're navigating your own identity there. I guess Jay. Well, I found myself to be pretty athletic. He kind of got to be the athlete. So whatever. And then Jesse, he's like the baby. Like he got he was a baby. I mean, we were all. I mean, we're 9 years separated from me to him, so there's quite a gap there. But I can recall like again just getting things that we never got, and just was a little more coddled than we all were. So I guess that would just be it. And then yeah, he was like the baby. Well, he's almost taller than all of us now, and it's worked out a little bit. So not so much baby anymore, but whatever.
What do you think our home life taught you early, for better or for worse?
Well, again, going to our parents' family dynamic was trying to maybe have a little bit better of a relationship. I mean, all relationships have their turbulence and bickers, and I guess maybe it was. And again, I can't say I've always done this as much as I would like to, but when you get to those moments with your partner where having a disagreement or whatever, trying to have it a little quieter or not necessarily, the kids exposed to it all the time. Well, listen, it's going to happen, but, maybe trying to tone that down a little and, just trying to interact a little nicer when you're not feeling what the person's saying or you have some words for them, just to maybe have it after so they don't take, because again, I feel like fortunately for me, sometimes you can see that and replicate it, or you can try and go and do the opposite of it. So for me, it's like if I can avoid having them have them make that choice or see these things and maybe not be able to do opposite and replicate, I want to make sure that they're replicating the right things. So in that sense, um, I remember when I was younger also that, again, as brothers, you fight a lot, and some of us fought with each other a little more. I think, you and Jay had some contentious stuff, and Jesse and Jay and Jesse even a lot, right? Like, and I remember at a point at it, maybe at 13 or 14, randomly, I thought that, like, man, when I get older, I think I just want my kids to just live on opposite ends of the house. So then there'll be no bickering, and again, when you get a little bit older, you realize you don't want that. And, my boys have the interactions they have, and they actually have more of the opposite end of the house kind of thing on their own. Naturally, it came that way. They don't quite get into it physically and stuff like that. So, if anything, it would be like the difference in the relationship between kids, trying to make sure that they have a good relationship, maybe not be as contentious and not getting along as sometimes it might have been for some of us growing up.
Yeah, I want to stitch in the half siblings, so half
Yes.
brothers, half
Yes.
sisters. So growing up, knowing that you had five older brothers, right, at the time, did that show up in? Because the other thing I'm thinking about is like, you were pretty confident. I mean, you carved the way, you tried new things, you did a fashion show and all that stuff, right? So I'm trying to understand, like, did the half siblings ever help you establish confidence in any area of your life, or was it kinda natural?
Yeah, I don't think so. Because yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because like as we're sitting here having a conversation about the older brother, I mean, I'm the older brother that grew up in our house. We have five older brothers and an older sister, half that, but for that part of our lives, we weren't really in each other's lives, which is why in the sense that no, we had five older brothers, but they were to me, it was almost like mysterious because if you think about it, I can remember meeting them and seeing them. There's actually a picture of us. I think I was maybe three, you might have been one, and we're in a picture with dad. And we probably didn't see them again till we were like 15 or 6, till I was about 15 or 16 years old. If you can remember, they came to one Christmas, and So there's a good chunk of time that, we're already doing our things and whatever. So it was more mystique, if anything. I guess what there would be is that, as an older, sometimes you see, like, I have friends that have older brothers, and you see like the protection they offer or just the interactions they have. And I guess maybe sometimes I found myself being like, I would say jealous, maybe envious, like, oh, I wish I knew I had older brothers, but I didn't have like I wonder sometimes I wish I had like a direct older brother like some of my friends had.
Okay, cool. And so on the confidence side of things, was confidence something that came naturally to you, or was it something that you might
I
have
guess it
built?
did. Like it just, I don't ever remember consciously thinking I'm so confident, but I maybe that's like, and I don't know if we're gonna talk with Zilla again. I took karate for a little bit, and I think maybe a lot of it came from that because, um, you know, again, when you're in karate, I guess maybe you go into your first couple tournaments and you have to get up on your own and do your kata, so that's kind of your first time. And I don't know how old I was, maybe 9 years old. So you're up in front of people, and it went well for me. So maybe just little building blocks like that, and I was pretty decent at karate. So I think maybe that working out for me was just maybe the building blocks to being confident in things that I do, because that first kind of activity I got involved in uh, worked well, and I was decent at it. So, if it maybe was a failure or tougher, maybe that would have shaped me to be a little more hesitant on things. But because that went well, that just kept leading to things going well, and at least being confident in trying it. Maybe not always good, but at least confident in trying it.
Hold that thought on karate because I'm just about to get a question on it. So we'll get back to it in a second. But in general, were there insecurities you had back then that people maybe would have never guessed?
Uh, Probably just ones that, like, any kids kind of go through when you have some friends that, you go to their house, like, oh man, again, little cleaner, a little bit nicer, a few more snacks in the cupboard, those kinds of things. You always got a buddy that's, he gets three pairs of shoes a year, or a Barney t-shirt, which is probably aging myself, but these types of things, right? That you see them get, and I'm just not. I tell the story all the time that I wanted some Reeboks, whatever, and mom came home with a pair of Racer Bach, and obviously they didn't cut it. And she said, but they're made by the same company. So little things like that, right? Like, so you see stuff that other people have, and I had Racer Bach, and hey, it is what it is.
I will never forget in grade 4 because when she would make us wear that one pair of shoes, money was tight, and got a pair of Reebok pumps. I was so excited. She invested the money. Day 3, kid named Jerry stepped on the tongue and the tongue fell out of the shoe. Like day 3. And instead of thinking, oh, maybe getting them returned, because that's a warranty thing or something,
Yeah, yeah.
they stapled that thing in my shoe for the rest of the year.
Hey, and again, if I really thought, there's definitely some stories that I would have that you just make do, as opposed to going to them to say, like, again, difference from today, right? A lot of kids today will just come and tell you, and on different levels. Some of us, like suckers, we just go out and replace it. Whereas back then, you're out of luck. I know, quickly, one more thing on shoes specifically, because again, at that time, of course, playing outside nonstop all the time, you wear your shoes down pretty quick. There's one time that she bought me a pair of baseball cleats just to have that extra layer of rubber, essentially, before I wore through the bottom of the shoe. It's a funny story. It's weird, and it's an interesting one. But I don't know, she did that, and I can't blame her. Shoes ain't cheap. She had to buy 4 pairs of them, and she was being creative, I guess.
God. And it might have been a slipping hazard or something. I don't know if she expects you to play on grass the whole time.
I
That's
don't
amazing.
know. I don't know. I had a pair of cleats to go play out in, and I think I ran extra hard for the next 3 or 4 weeks to wear those suckers down and just show that this wasn't going to work either. So we didn't have to go through. This didn't become a thing.
Oh, man. Okay, so to kick off the karate conversation, can you just help me understand how you remembered your katas? Because I I did, karate too, didn't get out of a white belt. I made up
Yeah,
my yellow belt. kata to get into yellow belt. I just couldn't remember it for the life of me. Did you ever have pressure memorizing your
You
kata?
know what? I don't know. Like I said, it just kind of came natural. I mean, it's again funny to talk about karate now again because now everything's MMA and it's great stuff. And when I was younger, karate was like, oh man, you take karate, and now it's like, I think that the karate guy's pretty weak compared to what these guys do now. But I can remember walking home from swimming lessons one time at about 8 years old, and I was walking and I was grabbing the bushes and I was just chopping little branches, chopping little branches, chopping little branches. I got home and I said to mom, can I take karate? And she looked into it, and I started taking karate, and it just, I don't know, it just stuck. I enjoyed it. And again, I went to, I just did well and got a little further than yellow belt, obviously. Excuse me. And after I think a year or so in, I think my sensei said, Mom, you should take them to this tournament and see what happens. And I remember I went and I won. I think I still have those two trophies in a dusty box downstairs. I got second place in sparring and third place in kata. So I don't know. I just managed to remember and just, it worked for me, I guess, at the time.
Did you have any problems with the tension in the beginning at all? Because there's a lot of quiet time, and when you see Ninja Turtles fighting, and you realize the discipline just to
Yeah.
listen to the sensei and that sort of thing. Did you ever struggle with just
Yeah. There's not
sitting
a
and
whole
listening?
lot of jump kicking and spin kicking as soon as you walk in there where like you think you're going to be doing, right? Like you think you'll be doing all these moves and you're just literally punching from one side of the floor to the other, right? So, um, no, again, I think that when I went in thinking it was going to be all this stuff, and you realize it's slow building, right? You learn these things bit by bit, and again, I just enjoyed it, and I think I had the sensei I liked was a good guy. He was nice to me, and the kids that I met through there were all nice, and just enjoyed it for quite a few years.
Uh, so is there anything from karate that still shows up in how you might parent, coach, or just carry yourself in general today?
I think just like discipline and patience. I think a lot of times, again, I wasn't a big fighter by any means growing up, as far as like when you're out and about and stuff like that. And I think, again, I wasn't looking to get in fights, but I think a lot of times where things were teetering on that, I think a lot of stuff you learn karate is just restraint. And, one of the main things you learn in any of the martial arts is, to try and diffuse a fight before getting in a fight before anything. So I think a lot of that is just discipline and restraint and hard work pays off. And that was some of the main things you did in karate.
Why did you eventually hang up the belt? So you were just, I think, just shy of a black belt.
So I made it to brown belt, which next up is black belt. So the the club trained with, um, they had a thing where, which I agree with because again, I remember different TV shows, you see these kids on TV, and you got to see an 8-year-old with a black belt, and you're like, literally, it's an 8-year-old can't have a black belt. So they had a thing you had to be 16 before you could get a black belt. So I was in blue and brown belt for quite a long time because I got to those levels by the time I was about 14. So just coming into high school. So coming into high school, and again, it's a whole new world now, right? Like again, you mentioned the Aja show, you got sports, you got girls and activities and student council. And I just wanted to be more involved in that. And I I had to so it took a while for me to do that because at some point the club offered what they called a lifetime membership, and mom and dad bought one, and I don't remember how much it was, but it wasn't $50. So it wasn't easy for me to say I don't want to do it anymore because they bought the lifetime membership. And I think I remember a time we were doing an after school rehearsal for the fashion show. This was in grade 9. So embarrassing. Grade 9, like, you're trying to establish yourself. And I knew I had karate that night, but I didn't want to leave the rehearsal. So I stayed and just stayed. And I remember mom coming right into the school, and she walked right in and said, "You got to go." And I was like, "Oh my God." Oh. I just put my head down and off I went to karate class, and I went to karate that night. And then I think that was shortly after that was the time finally had the discussion. Like, listen, I don't want to do this anymore. And I wasn't just quitting to do nothing. Like, I'm literally involved with like 3 or 4 things at school, and I'm just not into this anymore. And I can't get my black belt for another 2 years. And there was also, excuse me, a lot of I believe it or not, a lot of studying and stuff that came with achieving that black belt. It wasn't a matter of just memorizing a new kata and going to do it. There was a lot of kind of a philosophy type stuff behind it that you had to study and do. And I just wasn't into that. So it was just like, if I'm not going to do that, then I think it's time to um, hang it up essentially. If I had been literally knocking on the door, like maybe in a couple months, maybe it would have been different, but I knew I was still 2 years away, not into the extra stuff that I was going to have to do for it. And again, slowly becoming involved in a lot more stuff in high school.
So at the time, you were dabbling in sports like volleyball and basketball. That was in middle school, I believe, and then you started playing in high school. You were pretty, you were genuinely good at basketball. What did basketball mean to you back then when you were starting to play, and then you started to realize you were good at it?
Well, it was the thing to do essentially, right? Like, I mean, volleyball was okay, and volleyball's come a lot further now, and baseball was okay. I mean, luckily, guys play baseball, but a lot of the peers that I had, I should say all the peers I had, one of my very good friends that I met in grade 7 was probably one of my best friends for a few years, was big into basketball, which is kind of what probably started me focusing a little more on basketball. And then again, the people I would run into, and then you're playing on a high school team, and just became it was a very, very cool thing to do. And fortunately, I got to be pretty good at it. I will say, for as good as I was, though, there was a group of guys that were my age that were just a little bit above, and again, back in my time, the city only offered one rep team. You played rep or you didn't play at all. So those guys always ran on there. So they were like always the measuring stick of kind of where you stood. And I always had a tough time against those guys, but I think I held my own and was decent at the time, I think.
Yeah, you made a reputation for yourself, I'd say. Enough for me to want to feel like I had to catch up with that. Did sports in general, and you actually touched on student council, fashion shows, sports. You think back to what was going on in the house, and again, like you said, it wasn't anything crazy, but not always the greatest place to be. Do you find there's a correlation between wanting to be active in the high school stuff and being away from home, or was it more about establishing your reputation in high school?
Well, I definitely think partially just establishing yourself, in the pecking order of where everyone falls when you go to high school. There's a pecking order, and you are where you are. A little bit of that, and maybe again, you'd probably say now older, subconsciously, another benefit or bonus. I don't know what you being out of the house was nice. So that might have been the subconscious thing, but in my mind, it was just like, you want to play basketball, you want to be cool, you want to popular or whatever, right? So you're just trying to do the things and just be engaged and stuff like that. Student council being engaged. I remember fashion show. I wouldn't have even thought of it. It was a girl who lived a few blocks from us, and she was 2 or 3 years older than us. Actually, coincidentally enough, her last name was Green as well. She was the one who said, "You're doing this." And it actually ended up me being that year was the only grade 9 in the show that year. So that didn't hurt, like the getting your name out there and kind of placing you and becoming known within around your peers and stuff, right?
Until you get your ear yanked by your mom to go to karate class.
Yeah, I had to redeem myself, but at least that was just within the past show. But you bounce back from that, and it is what it is, right?
Yeah. Okay, so you did karate. You mentioned kind of like a solo performance with, demonstrating your katas and stuff like that. I bring that up because I know in a basketball game, whether it was a regular game or a championship game, whenever I had to inbound the ball or the spotlight was on me, I would freeze. Did you feel like you naturally were able to be in that spotlight, maybe because of karate or just because of your nature in general? Like what did pressure to perform feel like for you? And was it natural and enjoyable?
Well, it's funny you mentioned an inbounds because I remember a couple of specific times it became a thing after that for me as well. We were in a tight game with, I forget who it was, might have been STM or something like that. And again, public schools always had a tough time, especially for my age group, against the Catholic schools. So when you played them, you wanted to do well. But anyways, I had a bad inbounds and basically cost us the game, and that was a tough one to get over. And always had a little inbounding was always a little nerve wracking for me. The other stuff was, it was okay because, I guess for us, our team was just always okay. So we never had any high pressure games. So I never really was in any real pressure situations when I played. It was always just trying to get through the regular season and a playoff game. And unfortunately, we'd always get bounced in the first or second half. So I never really got to be on a big stage as far as basketball, like in a championship game with an important shot to make or anything like that. So I would like to think I would have managed it or would have had to, would have been okay taking that shot or doing what I need to do. But we never were in that position. But I do specifically recall a couple inbounds plays in some specific games where I blew it on an inbounds pass.
They were the worst. Hated them. How did your relationship with sports as a kid shape how you coach today?
Well, it's funny because like I know before I started coaching, even with Keegan and Colton, who I coached a little bit, I was always just trying to get them to do things, little things that maybe you don't that were ahead of the time. Like say taking charges. Maybe kids don't start taking charges till they're 11 or 12. It'll be something I was trying to show them at 9. Just stand there and take a charge. Like just trying to get them to do things that some kids don't learn to do till later, earlier. You know what I mean? Aside from, shooting, passing, dribbling, of course, there are all those things, but it's the little things within the game that I try and get them to do. And I think I continue to do that as I start to coach teams and younger kids. It wasn't necessarily the skills and stuff. While that's part of it, it was trying to do some of the things that other players don't do yet that they might start to do later. And some don't do it all, but do those things earlier. So that's some of those things. And again, it's a lot different because again, I started playing basketball when I was like 12. And again, I only played in high school. And so everything I learned was in high school or out on the street. Whereas now, again, Keegan and them, and they've been playing since they're 8 and 9 years old. So they had a huge head start on basketball and learning all the things like I would say, like I didn't really learn how to play basketball until I was out of high school and was just playing in men's leagues and having fun there. So again, I think it was just really trying to teach these guys and show these guys there's just some things that you can start to do sooner than kids. And if you get them to become habit, it makes all the difference in the world. It's not just about scoring baskets. There's a lot of other little things you can do that are beneficial to the team.
Right. Okay. We're going to shift a little bit. One difference between you and I is you didn't really on the surface seem to be shy with girls. Where do you think that confidence came from?
This is weird. So it's funny. Like I can't remember, things from last week, but there's a certain, and this doesn't apply just to girls. I just mean in general. Like there's just things that you can remember from when you're like grade 3, grade 4, grade 5. Anyways, I think maybe it started with like I can remember when we lived in the apartment building. So which would have been we moved. It would have been maybe around grade 1 or 2, which is crazy. I remember these girls. 2 girls came to call on me that we went to school with, and they wanted to play kissing tag. So both sides, it was me and them playing kissing tag. So again, and there's nothing crazy. It's like you like peck on the hand or on the cheek. Like I don't remember how the game works, but I specifically remember that was a thing. And so just maybe a few silly little interactions like that when you're young, where like you get a little bit of attention, and then for a while, you know girls wasn't even a thought. Again, it was more later on. Again, that my same friend who kind of got me into basketball. He was interacting with girls before I was, and remember being a little jealous, right? Because how come no girls are interacting with me? Because there was a time. So I think just eventually you just start to talk and meet a few at roller gardens, and next thing you know, you go on the Moonlight. You get a couple of Moonlights. Girls say yes to go on the Moonlight. Moonlight is a slow song. You just hold hands and skate a circle. For anyone that doesn't know, you get a couple girls that say yes, and you're like, good. But I will say, I never really had the confidence to go and talk to a girl out of the blue. I always had a little, maybe a friend told me, or I just knew for sure that they may have had a little liking. And I go, I don't know that I ever took too many leaps off the diving board just going for it. I will say I was a little too shy to get rejected.
I need to connect the dots here only because we talked about in the beginning, like growing up in the same environment, but having different experiences. So that same apartment building, I had a traumatic memory. I still remember when I was in senior kindergarten, and I think I went to put my arm around a girl named Janine. and she just said, "Don't touch me." I was embarrassed. It was probably the right thing to say. You don't put your hands on people, without being asked to do or whatever, right? But senior kindergarten that happened, and I remember it had an impact. And just the whole like not talking to girls. I dated um Lanny in grade 6, never talked to her the whole entire year. It was all delivering it through a
Yeah.
friend.
Yeah,
Dated.
and that's what it is, right? Like those interactions when you got a boyfriend or girlfriend, like it's so silly. Like, it's like, okay, so now what? Because that's what it is, right? Like, okay, great. Now you're my boyfriend, you're my girlfriend, and that's literally it. Literally it. So, but again, a small little interaction like that, and then you don't think of it at the time, probably shapes the way you interact the next time. Whereas for me, it was there was no type of reaction like that, so it was like, I don't know,
So
different than
put
yours.
yourself in the situation when you're about to go on a moonlight skate and you're walking. I don't know if you actually went up and asked or if you sent a message through a friend. Like, were you nervous or were you just good at hiding nerves while Sinead O'Connor, Nothing Compares to You, play while you're going around the ring?
Yeah, I actually remember. I think a lot of times at that time it was like your friend goes and asks, or their friend come and asks you, and then you nervously skate to the side. You look at each other weird. You hold hands, and then you go around the rink a couple times during the slow song. But it's super awkward for everybody, and it's like that. But that's just what it was. But it was definitely a lot of like your friend asking them or their friend asking you, and then you meet at the side of the rink.
So we're going to zoom out a bit. If you look at three different buckets: social confidence, academic confidence, and career confidence, which is later on, which of the three do you think come easier to you?
Social for sure, because academic was like, I was decent in school. I didn't, I wasn't blowing up the grades and smacking 90s, but I managed to graduate with honors with a little maneuvering. So I was okay there. So I was okay there. And then work confidence is like a lot of it again, depending on what time we're talking about. Because when you're in your teens and you're working, a lot of it's social, right? Like you're there social, everyone's there, and you got to do your job, of course. And I always felt confident in the work I was doing because I was basically just actually I shouldn't say always, but so yeah. So I guess I wouldn't say always. So that's why social confidence would be the best because that's just going out and interacting and hanging out and doesn't enjoy doing it.
Okay, we're going to take a detour for a second. This is going to tie back to my episodes, and I want to get your lenses on it, and then we'll go jump back into other stuff. You okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. In my solo episodes, I talked about wanting validation, trying to be funny, trying to fit in, and sometimes performing instead of being just myself. From your perspective as my older brother, do you remember seeing that?
It's funny. I don't. The first thing I will say is one of the things that stood out to me, which didn't seem strange to me, and I guess maybe the older brother doesn't always notice, is one of the first things you said as you were explaining your dynamic. I'm the middle child. I had an older brother who was the golden child. That one threw me for a little bit of a loop because I didn't get that sense, but I thought that threw me for a little bit of a loop. But as far as you, I didn't realize the kind of inner workings you were having as far as trying to really find that identity for yourself. Maybe I didn't understand your comedy at the time. Like I didn't know you were trying to be funny. I know one of the funny things you do was come in and try and ask me if, hey, do you know this song? And you would mumble a horrible rendition of it, and I'd have no idea and tell you, get out of my room. But yeah, I didn't realize. Like I said, I just, you had your friends. You could get a little angry sometimes, but uh, other than that, I no, I really didn't. I just thought we were all just kind of living the same life in the same house.
Begging for validation with that song thing. Like if he can get that I'm trying to sing Heads High, then there's a connection, a micro connection. That's validation. Like looking back, do you remember me trying to follow your lead in certain ways, whether in sports, socially, or just in how I carried myself?
Uh, well, you kind of touched on it. I guess it was to me would have just thought it wasn't necessarily following, but again, the basketball thing. You came in, you joined the basketball team, and I know Mr. Wright had high expectations of you after having had me, and you know we just didn't have the same type of game. So I don't know. That was probably a tough expectation to live up to. Um, Again, I wasn't a crazy fashionista, but I know every now and then you pick my clothes, which sometimes you got punished for in ways that were embarrassing to yourself because you would take a clothing item of mine that may have not have been cleaned properly and then had to, you know, be embarrassed for that out later. So there was that. But again, I really just thought you were doing your own thing because you're really good about, making your own choices and kind of pursuing your own stuff is what I saw.
So what I saw and experienced was somebody who was trying to latch on to something, some form of identity, because I didn't know who I was. So I've told you this many times. I needed to understand how I fit in this little ecosystem. So when you would go, I knew where the key to your room was. So you'd go out, I'd sneak into your room, I'd read all the notes from the girls. I knew who 7 out of 10 of them were as I went into high school. I had to get the research done. So in a lot of ways, I learned how to be who I was or who I needed to show up as through you vicariously. And that's why I always gave you the credit of like doing the hard work and stuff. Cause literally there was a blueprint. It was written. There were some things that maybe I could course correct, but there were a lot of things that I could just kind of rinse and repeat, right?
Yeah.
And that's literally what I did to a point where I'd wear your clothes because I know it's cool. It came from Foot Locker if you worked at Foot Locker or what have you. So I know I got game if I go out in this outfit
Yeah.
because Rise already tested it.
And I guess that's why I say like I didn't know, right? Because again, you're sneaking in my room after I go out, so I don't know you're in there doing recon on how to start high school. And I don't realize I'm creating or doing anything because I'm just living and assuming everyone else is doing the same thing. But again, I don't realize there's reconnaissance happening while I'm out and about.
Yeah, and you're
The
young.
invasion of my note box is just a crazy invasion of privacy. In my note box, man.
I apologize. I didn't know I was young. Was there ever okay, I'm gonna think about a couple of moments here. Early days, like when we were in an apartment, I remember a time where I think you were asked to go to a sleepover or something, and I wanted to go really badly, and it was your chance to go, and you got to go or what have you. But there were other times that mom would probably say, "Hey, bring your younger brother." I'm gonna tie this into maybe more high school because I know there might be one or two. Was there ever a time you felt responsible for me in a way that I may not have noticed? So what I did notice was that little apartment thing, but maybe parties, getting caught with your ID. I don't know. Those are a couple of things, but in general, from your
So
perspective,
if you want to go back, so again, back to the apartment, I can remember a time specifically. I was going for a bike ride with some of my friends, and mom made me take you. And like any older brother, like, I don't want to take him. So I remember you came and we went, and I remember me and my friends said, let's just go fast. And we took off on you. And then I remember looking back, but like now we couldn't see it and you were like gone. So it was like the initial plan was to take off on you, but then when I had the realization that you like had disappeared and now like I might have lost my brother, it was just completely flipped the script. Like, oh, just the natural instinct of like, okay, I gotta find him, we gotta get him back. Like this was stupid. Where is he? And I can't remember exactly how we found you or where we got you, but I remember taking off on you, losing you, and then me feeling like horrible and awful and being like, yo, we gotta find him. Like I was sad, even though I purposely left. But once it kind of hit me that we had left you and I don't know where you are. It's like, oh, this is not good. And again, I can't remember exactly how or where we found you. You're still here, so we found you somewhere. And that's probably one of those ones from back then where a little responsibility. Didn't want it, tried to ditch it, didn't like how that felt. Found you, and here we are.
ah, thanks for finding me.
Yeah.
What do you think we might understand about each other without needing to say it? And I think about a lot of like the Edford mom dynamics, but anything come to mind when you think that?
I think at the end of the day, again, we're all very busy and doing things, but I think the main thing is, and I don't think this is anything specific to us or anything like that, but I think you just know um, generally care for each other. And if any of either of us really need the other at a certain point in time or for something, whether it's to, you know, um, watch one of our kids go move a big, huge, dumb desk from some guy's house, you know, anything like that. Generally, they're going to be, and honestly, with us, sometimes, maybe 3 or 4 weeks might go by before we even talk, maybe longer, but, you know, that's just what it is. But we're always going to be there when it's really needed to be.
Yeah, it's true, and I mean, I just think about the FaceTime thing that we did yesterday,
Yeah.
out of nowhere, 44-minute chat with,
Yeah.
3 brothers, I'd say, right?
Yeah.
We were missing one. One of the brothers that we're talking to is a friend, but we call him a brother. But, yeah, that's the example that you were just it kind of illustrates what you were just saying, for sure.
Yeah. Cause I know, I have friends and I'm sure you have friends who their siblings, maybe they get together once a week or just have a little more interaction or whatever, and that's great. And sometimes you wish you could do that, but again, sometimes just things are busy or going different ways. But I don't think our makes our relationship as siblings any less valuable or important or anything like that at all.
Yeah, I share the same sentiment. What do you think having brothers teaches boys that they can't really learn anywhere else?
Well, I mean, sharing, respecting property, depending on the relationship, sometimes physical fighting, the information you get from their note boxes and the way they carry themselves, that kind of stuff. So it's just, just typical boy interactions that you just do early on before you get out and have your own guy friends, which are where your interactions aren't very different than the interactions you have with your brothers growing up. It's just, again, sometimes you get a little tougher. You find out how to take ribbing. People making fun of you. You can easily brush that off because you've had 3 brothers that did it for over and over for years and stuff like that. So I think just natural life stuff that happens out at work and stuff like that. You start at home with the people that you live with.
Okay. Um, I want to do a segue here. I'm going to ask you about mom and dad again, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So for the listeners, our mother passed away in 2011 and our father passed away in 2022. So when you reflect on mom leading up to her passing and maybe like the moment and then some reflection afterwards, can you kind of walk through that scenario with us and maybe include the critical chat that we had between the 4 of us at the hospital, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So we'll see how this goes. Um, Again, it started with, unfortunately, her getting liver disease and um, us navigating that. And again, we never did get as far as we would have liked to have gone. But I remember thinking, like, just trying to figure out which one of us can donate a liver. And the one thing I remember specifically, and the little bit of anger that I still hold from that whole thing, because you go through a million emotions when you lose somebody, and you get over it and you move on and do whatever. But the one little piece of anger that sits here, and I think this, I would say the sentiment probably has been said in different ways through a lot of things when you hear people talk about their healthcare stories and stuff like that is, when you see a doctor and they say one thing, and if you don't like it, maybe pursue other avenues to see. Cause I remember going to an appointment with in Toronto and, they were talking about the readings that came from some tests or whatever she was having. And there was a couple positive things, but, I just kept saying, how do we get this liver transplant thing going, And I remember this doctor's words, it makes me so angry. It's just, let's just wait and see. And I'll never forget that when he said, let's just wait and see. And probably 2 months later, let's wait and see led to, unfortunately, Mom passing. So I remember again. So just before that happened, she called me on a Friday night, and she wasn't feeling great, and she needed me to take her to the hospital. So I took her to the hospital, and I don't know, she had low blood pressure or whatever. And I just remember we're sitting in the waiting room, and again, to say the type of mom she was. And this when I think of this, it almost makes me cry a little bit because I just remember her saying sorry. We're sitting in the waiting room. I remember her saying, apologizing for having me there on a Friday night instead of being, wherever on a Friday night. And so when I think about that again, it makes me sad because it's just like, what kind of thought is that? It's like, it doesn't matter, mom. I'm here. It's Friday night, Saturday night, whatever night, it doesn't matter. And then unfortunately that night she went into a coma and we all visited her for, I can't remember how long, if it was a week or 2 weeks. It felt like forever. And like you alluded to, there came a point where the four of us were sitting in a waiting room and they kind of told us like, I don't think things are going to get any better here. Like, and I remember having we had the conversation, and I don't even remember how it was. Dad didn't even make this decision. We made this decision that it was time to pull the plug, as they say, and that was not an easy decision to make. But I think we knew that she, in some way or another, probably had mentioned and told us like, listen, if there ever comes a time, like I don't want to be laying there, and if they tell you that I'm going to come out of this, but I'm not going to be with it, like I, she doesn't. I don't want that. She doesn't want that, and I think that's kind of the information we were getting from the doctor. So the four of us had that conversation and made that decision to tell them like, this is time.
Yeah. I just do want to call out because I think it's important. When we were in that room, we did make the call to dad, and
Yeah,
he
yeah,
he didn't want to come to the hospital because he was in his own feelings. And I mean, I was resentful at the time towards him in terms of not being there as a father and, helping his sons be there, right, physically and all that. But at the end of the day, realizing people are only capable of giving what they can give, right? And I think that he was just in a way that he dealt with his own emotions and
yeah, and that's
can't
why for
really.
me I would never have had resentment in that sense because that it was who he was. You know what I mean? Like that's just he was who he was. And you're right, we did call and he didn't want it. I do know that he said no, but we just overruled him because you're not here.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that was pretty close to 2 months before Colty was born. So how did you navigate the first few months of grief, especially with when you have a newborn? I mean, I could imagine some conflicting feelings
So
and
yeah,
thoughts going
so
on.
yeah, you're right. That was 2 months to prior to Colby being born. Keegan was about 16 months old because they're only 18 months apart. So a couple of things got through. I forget who we chatted with at the funeral home or whatever when you're kind of they're going through the list of things. Make sure you call their insurance, call this, call that. And there was one thing that she said. She said, watch how you're going through your feelings. And she specifically noted that she said, be aware 10 to 12 months down the road, because she said that a lot of times people in grief, things don't hit them right away. It's down the road. So that was one of the things that stuck with me that she said that I was conscious of, to just try and be aware of how I was feeling. Was I doing anything different than I would normally do and stuff like that. But in the immediate time after, it was very tough, very sad. Fortunately, Katie, my wife, and her family was very, very supportive. And, we had that, funeral for mom that I think really deep down she had kind of always thought she didn't really want, but we did anyway. And a lot of people turned out who knew her. And between the four of us, we had a lot of support, which was really, really helpful to get all that support from people. But I think the one thought I remember having, and I've said this to one or two people that I know who have lost a parent that had, especially at the time, young kids. The one thought that got me through it was that, and Colty wasn't here yet, uh, but immediately after was just like, I have a son here that needs me, and he doesn't need a dad that's moping around all the time. So I have to. So even though I may have not been up to it, that helped me kind of put it aside and not just sit in my sorrow, because I got an 18-month-old running around, the energy they have. They're not, they need to get going. So that's kind of what got me through that. And then when Colty came, um, uh, so mom went by the name Lori, but her name was Lorraine. And I remember Colty being born, and I cried when Keegan was born, but it just was extra emotional, I guess, just coming all out because I'm having a child and 2 months off her, and she looked at me and we kind of came up with, and she was in agreement, and we went with Rain, uh, half of mom's name for Colton's middle name, so he carries part of her name uh, in his middle name, which was a nice little thing that we did, and that helped as well. But the main thing was for me just being up for the kids that I have, because they can't have a dad that's moping around. So that helped me kind of navigate it. Not just sit in my sorrow and let it overwhelm me and take over.
In in the year. Did you see things showing up in terms of maybe paying homage to mom? I'm assuming cheesecake recipe that you do Christmas time might be one of those things, but did anything show up for you in terms of just doing something deliberately to pay kind of homage to mom?
Well, again, Colton's middle name is a big one. The cheesecake carries on, that Katie does a good job of making that cheesecake for our thing. And, the kids love it the same way we loved it. So that's always nice. I think, the one thing it is for me is and I still do it. And I don't even know if I've told Katie this or anyone. I don't think I've ever really mentioned this, but usually around Christmas time on Christmas Day, I'll usually find myself on my own. I put on a little Rod Stewart and I have a good cry, like a minute or two. Just, I think I put on Rod Stewart. Rod Stewart was mom's favorite singer, and have a little cry, and I think that helps, and then off we go. Right? Again, got a family who needs things to be happening, so I can't sit in my sorrow. But I think that's kind of the little thing that I've done for quite a while now.
Yeah, I'll never forget one of the times on Christmas that I went and visited the cemetery, and I was, in my feelings, and I was crying, and uh out of nowhere, I swear, this woman comes up to me, doesn't say a word. We hugged for like 2.5 minutes and left. Not a word was exchanged. It was the craziest, most spiritual thing that I had ever experienced at the time, and it was just, one of those things I'll never forget in terms of,
That's wild. I guess there's one other thing. There's robins now. When I see them, remind me of mom because again, right around the passing, there was this. I don't even know if it was the same robin, but it looked like for 3 days there was a robin in my backyard, the same spot all the time. So I kind of pin that to being mom now. So when I see robin, excuse me, robins, that's mom.
wow. Okay. Just maybe a call to the listeners. This is heavier, but I hope this gives some value in terms of how two siblings grieve the loss of their parents. We lost our parents relatively young. I mean, you were in your early 30s, right, when mom passed?
2011. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yep. And father around the 40-year mark for me. You're about 40, 43. So anyhow, I hope this provides value. I'm sure it will. I want to fast forward to dad, and I promise we'll pivot from here. But I think we'd be remiss not to talk about the dad experience in terms of the same journey that you took, like with mom, just replicate that, but with dad's version. Can you
Yeah. So
share your experience?
again, so with dad, it was different. Like, so again, we mentioned it. So dad did a lot of drinking growing up and for a good portion of his life and smoked a lot. And there came a point, I think the doctor told me, you're starting to get a little hint of diabetes. So you need to cut that out. And I remember he went cold turkey, just stopped after like literally 50 years of heavy use. And funny enough, as soon as he did that, his health started deteriorating. He was in and out of the hospital over the course of so many years, but just weird how that happened. That the thing that he was told to stop, he just stopped it, and then things went worse for him. I don't know if he would have been better to wean off it or just tone it down, but it just seemed that his health went bad right after that. So he was in and out of the hospital, but then he started to get really sick, and um, same sort of thing. Like you'd go visit him, and he'd just be chilling on his couch, and you'd have to go take him a snack or let out the dog or do whatever. But I remember it was his 70th birthday. We were going out to celebrate, and we headed out to the keg. Yeah, we went to the keg, and he had a nice lobster dinner or whatever he had, and we were supposed to go for a big limo ride after that. Everyone that was there, and he said he wasn't feeling well. We went home. Or sorry, everybody went home, and you and I took him home in the limo, and we brought him in the house, and he started having an episode, and it was kind of crazy. And we had to call an ambulance, and they came, and unfortunately, he had to go to the hospital that night, and that was unfortunately his last night. But knowing Edford and what he loves, he got to smash crab legs and lobster, and he probably wouldn't have had it any other way, other than he always said he just wanted to go, just be on that couch when he went. I think finishing off with a good lobster dinner was at least a way he could be at peace.
I think the craziest thing too, though, is he didn't want to do anything for his birthday,
Yeah,
and I think it was 2 weeks before he said, "I want to get a limo to the keg." It was almost like in some weird way he knew, or
yeah.
So yeah, that was a tough one. Both very abrupt in two different scenarios. When you take inventory of both parents' passings, how does it shift anything for you in terms of perspective, like your priorities or how you show up day to day, especially when you think about, your kids?
I mean, I think it's just again, it's just knowing that, you never know what's gonna happen tomorrow. So just, enjoy the time with the people around you, and you hope that, you're instill what you can in your kids for them to be able to kind of mourn, but get over it, continue on down the right path and not have it, because sometimes those types of things really derail kind of how a person continues their life, right? And start to make bad choices and bad decisions. And you hope that you've made it that your kids can be strong enough to miss you, be upset, mourn you, but still continue on the right path and to make that, try and do things that would make you proud, even though you're not here.
Yeah, agreed. It'd be interesting to get Jesse and Jay's perspective at one point or another. Okay, so thanks for sharing. I know I kind of threw that on you, but I think it was a nice opportunity to stitch in childhood stuff with
Mhm.
all of that. Okay, so we got to high school, and I already know this is going to be a two-parter. I think what we're going to do is end it here. We did a little bit of a childhood brotherhood coverage. In the next conversation or the next part of the episode, we'll be diving into what your career looked like, the planning from grade 12 in terms of how you were approaching post-secondary and where your career is taking you today. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, listeners, tune in for part two coming at you shortly. As I reflect on this conversation with Rye, one of the biggest things that stands out to me is how two people can grow up in the same house under the same roof with the same parents, the same routines, the same tension, the same street, and the same neighborhood, and still walk away with somewhat different understandings of what it all meant. I think that's one of the most important parts of our discussion. For me, when I've reflected on childhood through this series, a lot of my lens has been around identity, validation, trying to fit in, and trying to understand where I belonged. But listening to Ryan, I'm reminded that while I was trying to figure out my place in the family, he was already occupying one. He was the oldest in the house. He was the one who went first. He was the first to be known, first to be tested, first to carry expectations that maybe were never fully spoken, but were still there all the same. What came through clearly in this discussion is that being the oldest doesn't always mean being loud or controlling or intentionally trying to lead. Sometimes it just means stepping in without being asked. It meant helping in small ways that nobody kept score of. It meant being aware that younger siblings are watching, even when you don't realize they're watching as closely as they are. And in hearing Rye, I think that quiet responsibility was one of the strongest threads in this episode. Another thing that really stood out to me was how childhood is rarely one thing. It's not clean, it's not all pain, and it's not all joy. It can be fun and chaotic, it can be simple and heavy, and it can be laughter in the basement with made up games like the flashlight game or bully in the alley or the chasing game outside, roller gardens, moonlight skates, karate tournaments, and all that innocence that comes with growing up in a simpler time. But sitting right beside that can be tension in the home, parents arguing, maybe a less than ideal setup in the house, money being tight, comparing yourself to other kids, and learning early that your home life doesn't quite feel like the homes you see around you. And I think that complexity matters because a lot of people grow up in environments that are hard to summarize. It wasn't all bad and it wasn't all good. It was a bit of both. And when you hear Rai describe it, you get the sense that part of growing up is learning how to hold those truths at the same time. I also think the conversation said a lot about the way confidence gets built. From the outside, Ryan always looked confident to me. He was involved, social, good at sports. He was comfortable around people, willing to put himself out there. But even in this discussion, you can hear that confidence didn't just fall out of the sky. It was built through reps. It was built through karate and trying things, through succeeding in some spaces early, through social moments that probably gave him momentum. And I think that's important, especially for young listeners, because confidence often looks natural from the outside when it really is being built little by little in the background. Another big theme was that brothers shape each other in ways they don't always understand real time. One of the things I took from the conversation is that didn't always realize he was creating a blueprint. He was just living. But for me, a lot of what he did became reference points. What was cool, what mattered, how to carry yourself, what to avoid, where to fit, and how to move. And I think that's true in a lot of families. One sibling can be trying to survive or figure themselves out, while another is quietly studying and building their identity off what they see. That doesn't always get talked about, but I think it's real. And then, of course, there's the grief woven into this conversation. Talking about our mom and dad brought another layer to the episode because it reminds us that family isn't just about childhood dynamics. It's also about what happens when you lose the people at the center of your story. What I appreciate about Rise Reflections is that they showed grief doesn't always look dramatic or identical from person to person. Sometimes it shows up in responsibility. Sometimes it's in private rituals. Sometimes it's in a song or a cheesecake recipe or a robin in the backyard. Or maybe even the decision to keep showing up for your own kids while carrying pain that never fully leaves you. And I think that's maybe one of the deeper themes of this episode overall, that experiences we have early in life don't just shape who we are. They keep echoing in how we parent, in how we lead, and in how we handle conflict, in how we show love as well, and also how we carry grief. What this conversation gave me most was perspective, not just on Rye, but on family in general. Sometimes understanding someone else's version of the same childhood helps you soften your grip on your own version. It doesn't erase your experience, but it adds some texture to it. It reminds you that people were carrying things too, different things, but they're real all the same. In part two, we are going to shift from Rye's upbringing and family role and early life experiences into his career journey. And I think that's an important transition because the second part of his story really shows what happens when those early traits, discipline, adaptability, social confidence, resilience, and even quiet responsibility start showing up in the real world. His career path wasn't linear. It wasn't mapped out from the beginning, but it was built step by step through experience, persistence, and figuring things out as he went. So if this episode was about the foundation, we can think about the next episode being about what got built on top of it. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in part two, which will be out next week.